You'd put in your CRM, but then you go, okay, well, I'm looking at this process. Of this process, this is the biggest pain point. Can we automate that piece?
Hi, I'm Khyati Pal, and this is all about CRM. On this episode, we're going to be focusing on recruitment sales, the difference between an ATS and a CRM, data, AI, and automation. From email campaigns to SEO, my favorite topic, all things CRM. We've got Jamie Hart with us, David Connolly, Neil Curry, Stuart Johnson, Mike Watman. Welcome, Kristie.
Would I spend £50 to go to this conversation?
No.
No. And until the answer is yes, then change them.
Exactly.
I know marketing isn't able to be measured. I was like, excuse me? Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the most measurable.
Someone described to me once that recruiters spend their place in two zones, the finding zone and the fill-in zone.
Yes.
And the trick is to spend more time, as much time as possible in the fill-in zone, because that's where the money is.
3 pieces of advice you would give to anyone starting their journey, currently shopping for, let's just say, maybe even a new CRM.
To find out.
Your CRM is one of the most important tools for your marketing department. It dictates the success of your marketing campaigns, the deliverability on its objectives, and of course, your marketing ROI. My guest, Kristie Perrote from Thrive Marketing, is passionate about delivering high-quality marketing strategy as well as day-to-day operations for recruitment agencies. With 20 years' experience in recruitment marketing, she has seen it all, done it all. From email campaigns to SEO to employer branding to just developing your marketing teams to really help assist your business deliver on their goals. Welcome, Kristie.
Thank you for having me, and what a great introduction.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you.
I rehearsed it a lot. It's wonderful to have you because I just really needed someone who understood recruitment marketing specifically and the many challenges, but also opportunities concerning CRMs and marketing.
And you know what I love? We've met quite recently, and it was like we were finishing each other's words, or each other's sentences on our intro call.
Yes.
And it's what I find so amazing is that when you have that tool, in this case, the CRM, if you're coming at it from an operations or a technical perspective, or if you're coming at it from a marketing perspective, you're singing from the same hymn sheet.
Absolutely.
You just are employing different tactics to make it do what you need it to do.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Massive kinship there.
Yes, we're connected. You're like my initial sake instead of my namesake. We're like KPs,
Perfect.
the KPs
Done.
of the world.
Watch out.
Just here. So, let's look at just marketing in recruitment. It is nuanced. It's not your standard B2B or your standard B2C marketing. Exactly,
it's
isn't
both
it?
And B2E potentially as well.
So there's so many variants to recruitment marketing. What are some of the challenges, or let's just say your top 3 challenges that you've seen perhaps stay consistent in the last 10 years?
Yeah, I think the challenge, and I'm going to maybe segment the agencies a little bit, that the larger businesses, the ones that have, a multidisciplinary marketing function, they bring in all that specialty expertise, right? They have people who are your CRM experts, the social media experts, the brand. They have that variety. For the SME space, who don't have that luxury yet, they often rely on a single marketer, and unfortunately, that marketer's often, they're often. And I won't speak for everyone, but they may not be, that senior director level, and they may not have the mentorship on a marketing technical side. So you get these recruitment leaders who are amazing at what they do. They've built these businesses and they understand BD. They get it. And so often then they turn to the marketers and say, okay, well, you know what you're doing. Off you go.
Yeah.
So that lack of that intrinsic link between the two. And what often happens, depending on, how senior the marketer is and or the direction that the leadership gives them, is that it's a natural human way of being, is that you're going to go to what you know.
Exactly.
And recruiters spend probably more than 8 hours a day, probably 12 hours a day on their LinkedIn or whatever social platform of choice. And so there's this idea that, well, that's the place. That's where we need to be. And in reality, and this is, again, where CRM, let's bring it back to the subject today. If you are a recruiter with any kind of tenure in your business, you have built the CRM, and it's an expensive CRM.
It is, exactly.
Job board spend, LinkedIn recruiter license spend, consultant headcount spend. You're building this thing.
And your own website maintenance and any
everything
integration
that's
there.
feeding in, feeding in, and yet it gets ignored. But the data deprecates, and you can't blame the consultants for always going for, the new shiny things, because industry by its very nature, particularly the contingent side of the industry, is always about who's the first in, who's going to get that candidate the fastest. So the consultant's always going to go to social or to job boards until you create this ecosystem that the CRM really is at the heart of not only your data practices and your operational practices, but the ethos of the business. That's and not to mention that they're going to find what they're looking for.
Exactly. I think that's what it is. If it is used properly, it can be it's a gold mine. It's a gold mine that exists and will continue to evolve to serve your business better. You mentioned about marketing resource within recruitment agencies. And of course, there's more experienced marketers and teams where there's more investment and depending on the scale of operations. But with SMEs specifically, there is, to your point, one person that might be wearing multiple hats without proper, not qualification per se, but experience.
And visibility. And mentorship.
Yes. And that link between business strategy and the ability to comprehend and create a marketing strategy to deliver on the business objectives. How would you go about it? Because I know that even in my experience, and I'm sure in your experience, SME leaders really struggle to understand the potential of marketing purely because it's not instant ROI. It's not transaction. It's not like you do something and there, boom, profit. It's not how it works. Whereas when you are selling something, you see it immediately, isn't it? Either you have the sale or not. Either your candidate's being placed or not. That kind of mindset cannot be applied to marketing. How do you go about educating your clients to see the value, perhaps not just value of investment in marketing, but also marketing resource, marketing expertise, and the time required?
Yes. Lots of questions rolled into that one.
I'm guilty of that.
I think the biggest thing that, again, comes into having a healthy curiosity about what data is at your fingertips and what a program that has the dashboards and has the data and understands what those ROI drivers are to set it up to actually measure it. Because what you just said, I hear that a lot. And I almost every call I'm on. And they say, oh, well, I know marketing isn't able to be measured. And I was like, excuse me? Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
It's that, in fact, it's probably one of the most measurable. It's almost, what do you need to measure of everything that you have? But you need to understand what you want it to achieve. And that does come at, both the leadership, I'd like to say, with marketing hand in hand, because the leaders need to understand the art of the possible. What is the possible? And there are some, depending on your tech stack and different things, there is some different art of the possible. It's not going to be the same as the business who has, all the bells and whistles of everything. But you can get a lot and you can see a lot. But it comes from the place, whether or not that marketer, again, has the experience or the awareness is, how do you set up these platforms? How do you set up the dashboards to measure the right things? And the right things for me is, I'm guilty of this as well. I put out a social post and I do all the right things, play the algorithms. I know how to do it. I know the right things to do. And I get my dopamine fix. I see the likes coming in. Every couple hours, oh, what's my visibility like? You get that dopamine hit. And I'm not saying to take away from that because there is absolutely a place for the personal branding and for that awareness it's creating. That's where it gets this reputation that it's not measurable because it's very hard to go from a dopamine hit, like and share to a trackable, traceable conversion. ROI. But there's ways around this. And it's not, the holy grail for me are CVs that come in, job orders that come in. If you could get it to a place that you can track it all the way through to placement, even better. That is part of the tech challenge and also a human nature. We're not Amazon. We're not putting job order into a basket and pressing purchase. Click. There's a human element that comes in there. But you could get pretty close to actually see, is it having an impact? And the other piece on the automation side is we're not just talking about, we have to get out of the headspace that automation is just automated e-shots, automated client outreach, automated client or candidate reactivation, albeit a big opportunity and a big part of it. But it's actually all those operational points. It's all those touch points. It's helping with compliance. It's helping with quality assurance post-placement. It's cross-selling when a candidate who's placed could be a hiring manager in 3 or 6 months' time. All these things suddenly make this an incredible tool in your arsenal that you can start measuring time and the actual time and equivalent time that it would take a consultant to do all those manual actions, well, suddenly you can say, well, the automation has saved you this much time. If you actually put that into a salary cost, a headcount cost, this is the potential. And we have some stats on that is pretty amazing when you actually do the proper automation.
I'm not surprised, but it's just the education piece, isn't it? When you break it down by like how much it would cost and people, headcount that you need or you will save on if you automate certain things. Talking about automation in the world of marketing at the moment, because people have just decided to use automation for all of these outreach emails without much thought, no understanding of behavior,
no
segmentation, nothing, like finishing each other's sentences.
See what we did there?
And, like no use of CRM data and strategy behind it. Automation is starting to get a really bad rep, isn't it?
It
like,
is.
Everyone's like, oh, I don't want another outreach email. I don't want to explore synergies. And I get it. It's hilarious. But that's not how you use it. It's not the technology's fault. It's not the automation's fault. It's the team, the person, or how the business that is using it.
Bad marketing is bad marketing if it's one-to-one or one-to-many. Automation has just made that much more apparent now because it is going one-to-many.
Yes. And I think the understanding of, talking about segmentation, like the funnel approach, whether you sort of use it in that way or whatever else you want to call it. Like at the end of the day, the top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, it's the same. You can use different terminology, but the idea of branding, employer brand, just building that equity. And then the more operational, which is when they get into your how they move through it, be it candidates or clients. There's still my big thing, or that I have experienced, is the patience of not quite understanding how a customer moves through your system and not necessarily in a linear manner.
No.
So again, I think when you approach your marketing campaigns on behalf of your clients or strategy, and you talk about their in-house with their in-house teams and with the leaders, how do you suggest they think about it when thinking about candidate experience and relationships as well as client experience and relationships? I know I've asked too many questions in one question again.
I think it's first understanding where they're on their automation journey. There's definitely low-hanging fruit, and there's a prioritization. And the recruitment industry has been a tough game lately, and the number one thing for most agencies has been client reactivation and or job order creation. So the low-hanging fruit is definitely going to be nurture campaigns and how do you do that BD outreach with it. Genuinely 99% of our engagements that we undertake will have that element to it. And to be honest, whether it's their first parlay into automation or their way down the road, that always needs to be almost a foundational part of it, because at the end of the day, it is a sales business at the end of the day. But once they actually start getting into it, we're in a fortunate position. We've been doing this for 6 years, and our marketing automation manager, Harry Oakley, I'll give a plug for him. He is genuinely incredible at not only understanding the technology, but understanding the use case in recruitment. Oh, and the last piece is he's incredibly passionate about data.
Okay.
Like geek level. And exactly. He would, I hope, be very proud to wear that label. But as such, we've gone through over 7 million emails. We've looked at what is the best practice, and the beauty of all of this is that it is data led. That you can see what's working, what's not. You can do in marketing speak, it's A/B testing. If you don't know what it is, you do 2 versions or multiple versions. You test them out. You see which one works best.
Different versions.
But we've been able to work out what is almost a best practice across some of the different triggers and some of the different opportunities across some of this operational touch point stuff we were saying. So if you start with a bit of a framework, and it's easy for us to say, for somebody who's not in that position, I'll explain the backside of it. But we've been able to take that knowledge and then dig deep into finding out what is that unique company's approach. So what is their process when they register a candidate and getting a candidate from registration? Depending on the company, they may have different levels of compliance. Obviously, teaching, nursing, et cetera, have really quite stringent compliance. Yeah. But what does that look like? And what does from application to registration to interview to job interview, what does that look like? So if you take that framework and then start creating the nuances of that unique experience for that agency, you get in a great place.
Exactly.
Now, if you don't have a Harry and 7 million emails to look at,
what everyone
I'd
does.
say, is really just, if you don't have it already, document your process. It doesn't have to be that hard, but document what's your process from, in this case, registration through to
Placement.
Placement? Yeah, that's even better. I was even going to interview. But yes, let's get to placement, even better. But if you can map that, it's not such a stretch to actually see how then automation then layers onto that.
Absolutely. It's the effort, isn't it? It's almost like, okay, all of this is happening in the background, whether we choose to map it out or not. Because at the moment, it's action points. They're happening and everyone's found their own way to deliver or act so that the outcome is there. The process is not defined and therefore it's not working for the business, but it's working for the individual. And as long as the individuals are doing
That's a good point.
Exactly, it's fine, isn't it? And I think it has to be business-led because individuals, path of least resistance, but also change is not something that people just wake up one day and go, oh, I'm just going to change myself. No one does that unless, you're given some direction, but also reason for change. So as a business, you have to really lead that and bring the individuals on the journey. My big issue sometimes arises around small to medium business operations, around the silos that shouldn't exist. Yes. So sales and marketing, I don't know, in every industry, to be fair, not even recruitment, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, there's this weird fight or war happening between sales and marketing, which I have no idea why. Same side, delivering on the same, ideally should be delivering on the same business goals, just differently.
Different ways to get there. Yep.
So how do you, especially like small to medium enterprises, bridge that gap between sales and marketing to then just deliver for sales, deliver for marketing, deliver for the business?
I think there's two parts to what you said there, because I think as recruitment businesses in general, and I'm not speaking marketing specific, I think just as you're maturing as a business, we've gone through this in our business in the last year as well. How do you start setting up those processes to create something of value in your business? And I am speaking specifically if companies are looking towards, future growth or even potential future exit, etc. What is actually value in what you're delivering? And if you are going for exit, what are you creating that somebody will want to purchase or invest in? So suddenly you get into it, you're changing the mindset and possibly culture of the business to go from it being a collection of individual consultants to being the business. I hear so often, oh, let's face it, a client will only work with they work with the individual, they don't work with the company. I was like, that's not always the case. That's not true. I don't think particularly the large businesses, they have not traded on that. No. I can guarantee you.
The relationship only takes you so far. The infrastructure of delivery, it's almost like it's forgotten.
Yeah. And I'd like to think it's not, because there's some amazing SME businesses that do incredible stuff. It's not a blanket statement. It's a statement from coming to a place where you want to grow. One of the things that I hear constantly is, how hard it is to find recruiter talent. How do you find those amazing recruiters? Do you find them? Do you develop them from within? How do you get them? And oftentimes people get these great recruiters and they've set themselves up almost like these siloed individuals that are doing their own thing. And let's face it, they can leave the business at any time. They can be loyal, not saying they can't, but we see it. There's, they set up shop themselves, they move, whatever. So if you want something value, you need to create a process. You need to create your way, your way, exactly. your recipe that your teams all follow and get on board with. Second part of your question or statement there was, how do you break down the silo between sales and marketing? So first of all, we need processes, we need culture, etc. But I do think it starts with the leadership. And that leadership, how do you treat marketing? Do you treat marketing as the coloring in department who just gets thrown into, no strategy? And they might say we have strategy, but it always gets pushed aside to, oh, I have the sales deck I need this, I need that. Ooh, get me these social media posts. Yeah.
Or organize the Christmas party. Just do everything. Just do everything.
Yeah, exactly. Or organize the Christmas party. That's not marketing.
No,
just
it's not.
Pointing it out.
Exactly.
And so if you don't give, the marketer the space and the license to actually create a marketing strategy and plan, that's the first part of it. Second part of it is how you position that person in the business will be very, very apparent to the consultants. If you position that marketer as an active contributor to strategy, growth, opportunity, the rest of the business will as well. So that means that the leader, they don't have to know all the answers, but they have to know the right questions. We actually have, I'm going to plug it for a minute, we have a resource that called 50 questions every recruitment leader should ask their marketer, but didn't know to ask.
That's good.
It means you don't need to know Google Analytics. No. I don't expect you to go on a crash course to know Google Analytics, but what are the questions that you should be asking your marketer to actually understand if it is moving the dial? And there's 50 of them. There's probably 200 of them, but we've narrowed it down to 50. It's still plenty. It's not even digestible. There's a lot in that. But this is it. I find the leaders who have a natural curiosity, a natural humility that they don't need to know all the answers, but they have a curiosity to bring it along with them. And once they've asked those questions and they've armed themselves with the knowledge, they need to be the ones who are bringing it to the teams. They need to be celebrating marketing successes as much as they celebrate the sales successes. Talk about it. If you have, a quarterly business meeting or a monthly business meeting, marketing should be on the agenda, not something that marketing hears about, through the grapevine later on.
Or be just told that this is what we've decided. This needs to be done without having any input on perhaps there's a different way, a more efficient way that we could look at it because, marketing brings their expertise to the table. Speaking of that, recruitment agencies tend to be, everything about the operations tend to be recruiter first rather than any other department first or customer first. Would you say there are pros and cons to that? Do you think that approach is right? Or do you think it is moving towards a customer first approach, which is something that other industries obviously lead with rather than their sales teams? Customer first?
That's a really interesting question. I'm going to lead with the fact that probably the last 6 months, I have seen more and more, let's call it innovation, but that's a bit of a throwaway. It's probably too big a word, but I think a focus on doing these things differently. I've actually been quite vocal. If anybody's heard me recently, I've been very vocal at probably very out of my wheelhouse of marketing, but the contingency model is set up for failure for everyone. Who loves this? That there's a statistic out there, if somebody has not heard this, that the average fill rate on contingency is 19%. 1 in 5 roles you place. So that means you're working for free 81% of your time. And I think that feeds a lot of the culture. I think it certainly feeds, it's a big task to overcome that. One recruitment agency is going to struggle to change a whole industry and not even just the recruiters, but the client's expectations.
Yeah.
They expect contingency. They've been how they've always worked. The shift I've been seeing is that people are tired of that. They're tired of the model, and there's been just incredible strides made on whether it's RPO or some kind of embedded model, adding that extra value versus just, I don't want to say transactional, because I know there's some incredible recruiters out there. But when I say transactional, I mean one-offs, one-offs here and there. As soon as you start doing, outsourcing the function, which also includes employer branding and recruitment marketing and creating something, you're putting the consulting back in consultant, right?
God, yes.
It really is something of more substance and legacy value. But also, those who are looking at doing, exclusive, that's definitely has been on the agenda for a while, but much more of it. How do you get those exclusive terms? So you're using your brand to articulate the value of exclusive. So don't just kind of have, I think the discussion on, I tried to sell them exclusive happens in the discussion, the negotiation. But why isn't it up front on your website? Why aren't you, extolling the benefit of what this can bring the end client in ways of working with you? But in addition to that, as you do work up kind of that value chain into retained services, I've seen so much more on productization and looking at executive search and how do you carve up the different pieces as value that you could be offering. We've seen for a while companies that are in whether it's executive search or senior interim, they've moved into that consultancy space, seeing a lot more of that. So I think there's a really great opportunity right now that an evolution of the industry is making, for your original question, the customer first. I think we've seen more of that in the last 6 months than I've seen in the last 6 years. So it's exciting.
That is very exciting. And I think, to your point, I've seen some recruitment agencies really come out and, obviously announce these different initiatives. And I hope that they inspire others as they see their successes, but also just a different, fresh approach to, the tried and tested methods.
It makes you stand out as well.
Absolutely.
Going back to the automation point, I get so many e-shots. I fall on whatever lists when people are scraping lists. I'm falling on whatever lists, and I'm getting these e-shots, and it's really hard to differentiate between one agency and another. And I'm sitting there as a recruitment marketer with with an eagle eye looking at this. But you can see why, with this explosion of email and automation, from the client's vantage point, that it just looks like another email. They all look very, very samey now. If you don't have the way, and I'm not talking about a brand or a logo, but I'm talking about the actual offering. It's very easy for them to either delete, or it's very easy for them to say, okay, sure, you could have a stab at it, along with the other 10 contingency agents that I have on. And whoever gets there first or gets the best doesn't matter to me as a client.
Yeah.
I only pay once if I engage one or if I engage 10.
Exactly. You're all part of the short list.
Yeah. And I think that's the most expensive mistake recruiters can make right now. They think they have a job order on. They think it's a success. And maybe they know that it's contingent. Maybe they know there's lots trying to get in there. But again, that goes back to that 80% you're working for free.
Yeah.
It's not the right job order for you.
No.
We need more of the right job orders that are going to turn into placements.
That is, you know, what you've just said. It's so interesting because you've mentioned a stat that's obviously found in data. If people were to use their CRM, that data will be found in the CRM. You can run reports and analyze and report on anything from how much time, like, you know, BD calls to conversions to the volume of placements per client, per organization, types, average duration, whatnot, based on your niche. Is it, you know, is it in line with your niche or is it shorter, longer, whatever? All of that information can be available to you. The tech exists. All you have to do is implement it and then make sure that your team and you are consistent with it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You know, going back to your point about email campaigns and how they're starting to appear very samey, and then also connecting it to what we previously discussed, how like people are just utilizing your Gen AI to generate like standard content without much background. I have nothing against, I use it. There's nothing wrong with using Gen AI, but I think it's how you use it because it's another tool.
Absolutely.
So without giving it any background, without giving it exactly what you want out of it and then tweaking it and like, you know, at the end of the day,
human touch. Use the technology and add the human touch.
you can see it's quite obvious when you
Absolutely.
receive emails that it hasn't happened. What is your suggestion that people do? I feel like there's obviously this whole marketing, you know, there's pages and pages of research around what makes for engaging subject lines, what should be the ideal like structure of your email, where should images sit, what should the content be. But in your experience, specifically for recruitment marketing, and let's just talk about candidates, and then we can talk about BD on the client side, if you don't mind. And just maybe talk us through, in the millions of emails you've analyzed, what makes for a good engaging email?
There's a lot to unpack in that. I think I'm going to start with saying, you know, there's a saying right now, which I'm not a big fan of, that recruitment is marketing.
What?
You've not heard this one? No. Recruitment is marketing. Every recruiter is a marketer, which there is, I partly agree, for the same reasons. You know, how do you manage? Email outreach is in most people's hands. You know, I coined this recently, you know, marketing is very accessible these days. It's very accessible. So hence you get these recruitment is marketing. And maybe we need to have a new definition of marketing. What's centralized marketing? What's BD? You know, they really have merged together. So maybe there's a task for somebody out there that they can redefine this. But I think we need to understand when is the moment for centralized communications and when is the moment for consultant-led communications. And how do they have to go hand in hand, going back to the marketing and sales being hand in hand. But how do they link together? And I think the unfortunate thing is, I mean, I've been in the industry too long, but, you know, there's always been an e-shot culture. There's always been this e-shot culture. And when it's accessible, you get these consultants who, you know, they'll put together something that they maybe it'd be fine one-to-one, but they put this together and they have this capability to then, you know, put it to, you know, they can automate it, and suddenly it goes out to like thousands of contacts, but they're not necessarily, or their opinion of what a success looks like may be very, very different. So suddenly they've sent this out to 10,000 contacts and maybe they get one bite off of it, and that somebody comes back and says, yeah, I have this job on. Can you please, you know, here's the job spec, go do it. And maybe that client has 10 recruiters currently working on it. But from the vantage point of that recruiter, that was a success.
Exactly.
That was a massive success. They don't see the 9,999 that have, you know, you've just turned off from it, that you've possibly hurt your personal brand or your company's brand by doing it.
True.
I've been saying I get a lot of e-shots recently. I get these crazy e-shots that has nothing to do with me. So the segmentation is so poor. I had one, and I have told this story before, so apologies for those who've heard it. But I have one that it was, I emailed the marketer back and saying, you know, just no, this is not the right email for me. And I said, you have insurance actuaries on there. You have finance, you have legal staff. You know, it was a hodgepodge of every kind of candidate on there. And her response was, well, you fall into our managing director segmentation. And so you get everything.
How annoying. As in, like, how annoying for you to receive everything and
you've
irrelevant.
just turned off possibly your number one stakeholder in that business, or arguably the number one stakeholder. But you've just said, okay, so the managing director, because he or she might have everything under them. By the way, insurance actuaries only exist if you're in the insurance industry. Just putting that out there.
Like managing directors.
Yes, I personally might hire a finance person. I would not ever hire an insurance actuary.
Yeah.
But you've really missed a beat with this.
Yeah, that actually frustrates me, because that's something that's that should be quite basic, isn't it? Like, but I think maybe it comes back to objectives that, you know, you talked about in segmentation.
I think they see it as a numbers game. You know, if I send it to 10,000, that's going to be better than if I send it to 1,000. Or if you send it to 100. So here's how you do it instead. Hyper segment, and it actually goes beyond from what I've just said, industry. Industry is actually pretty basic segmentation. But if you hyper segment, and we could go into what that means, and you craft a message that works for maybe a segmentation group of 100, and then you just tweak that message. You don't have to write it from scratch. So have your strategy, but it's tweaked to these different levels of segmentation. It is more work than doing it once and sending it to 10,000, but you're going to find that your success rate and conversion rate off of it is going to go through the roof.
Absolutely.
Because they may realize it's not one-to-one, but the point is they feel that it's one-to-one because they feel that you've captured their pain points.
And I think the email marketing platforms have really evolved.
Incredible.
You know, so you've got your CRM capabilities. But if you want to go beyond, most CRMs have, obviously, like, not most, but some CRMs have a limit of how many, like, an individual consultant can send. And that's fine. So say, for example, if you have like a job you really need to recruit for in contractor, contingent market, you send that mail shot to 200. But anything coming from a brand, building a brand, should sit with marketing.
I would hope so.
Not with the consultant.
I hope so.
Hopefully. But the email marketing platforms have evolved tremendously in the last, I'd say, even like 5 years. The idea, the ability to segment in whatever way you want, but behavior, build journeys, trigger things.
Triggers, lead scoring.
Exactly. There's like opportunity, isn't it? It's, again, like, tools exist. Thought and expertise and curiosity perhaps could do with improvement.
Yeah.
Coming back to data, email, campaigns, and CRM. This is another thing that I've been hearing. The CRM should stay with marketing department.
I know, that's a contentious one right now.
Tell me, how do you feel about that?
I don't think it's fair for me to actually have an opinion on that.
Okay.
That's an interesting
Have one anyway.
But I don't actually think it's fair, because marketers are always going to come at it from a marketer's place.
Yes.
So I think the reality is having empathy. I say that with my team. I've always used that word, empathy. And what I mean by empathy is always putting yourself in the shoes of the person, whoever your stakeholder is. So I won't say necessarily ownership, because I think we need to treat it like a car, that different people can borrow the keys to the car. So it's the business owns the car. There's different people. There's different people with the keys to the car. I think at the heart of it, if the consultants do not use the CRM, there is no point to having it. So, I do get a lot of questions from people saying, what's the best CRM to use? What's the best one from your opinion? And the reality is whichever one works for your consultants, for your business, obviously, for your consultants to actually use it, and then bring in the marketing functionality. Close second, because I also believe when you're doing such an investment as is a CRM, it needs to be fit for purpose today, and then also fit for purpose for the future. Yeah. So yes, you need to really, and there's so many that are actually quite good these days that there's
fabulous
that the marketing
CRMs.
Could be right in there with it. But I would never say that marketing needs to lead that discussion, because again, if the consultants don't use it, it's never going to be that foundational powerhouse of an asset that you want it to be.
Yes. My opinion on it, because I obviously have one, is very much to what you've just said. I think for me, your CRM, first and foremost should service the revenue operations in your company, which is made up of sales, marketing, and customer service, right? Customer service functions. If you're investing in a CRM, and of course, dependent on the scale of your operations. So, just because I am suggesting a way does not mean it's going to work for you, because you might not be there in terms of the scale of your operations or the investment required. But if you are scaling your operations, you want to lead with revenue operations and CRM at the heart of it, you do need a person or a team to own it. You do. And that team basically stays for the CRM, technical as well as user experience, as well as deliverability, but works with all the functions, because for them, business first, not department first. So it's almost like business objectives. That's what they lead with. So it's not about individuals. It's not about teams coming and just going, oh no, but I think this is the way. It's almost like, okay, this is what you're trying to achieve. Just give me your pain point. Give me your requirement. Do not give me the solution. I will give you the solution, because I will be able to link it with the business objectives. I feel like that's how it should be.
So when in a company's growth trajectory, when is that person hired?
So for me, I think when you get a CRM, which is obviously going to be from the very beginning, ideally, hopefully, once you go from 5 and beyond, you know.
Hopefully from 1 and beyond.
Yeah, I'm like more, 5+ or 1+. If you start using your CRM, I think you will be probably using it for BD purposes, recording the activity and, the ATS capabilities. So, tracking your things and your placements. The moment you start to actually have a strategy that does bring the departments together to deliver on that, you need that. You need, because your CRM...
Is there a number? Is there a magic number
I would say...
for headcount?
To be fair, I have seen operations of 30 where they have that person.
That was my
head.
Yeah,
that's when they bring that person in and really starts to take ownership of all things customer. And this might be in line with what you were talking about before. The last 6 months, certain agencies have really come out and are doing things differently. And I think it's those types of operations and thinking, which is when they're bringing that person in. And I think I would suggest that's what they do, because I have been quite vocal about it as well, that you cannot have individual or department bias come into play when doing or working with a system or designing a system that's supposed to serve the whole business. If you do that, then it will always be either sales-led or marketing-led. And that's not going to do everything that your system can do to go beyond.
I think this fits into that kind of new age, and also humility, again, of that leadership when they're setting this up, or maybe call it vision. I'm going to say the age of most people who are setting up their own business, but that's not even true, because there are plenty that, have maybe only been in the industry 5-10 years and they're setting up. But I'll put myself in that age of a lot of the recruitment leaders. A lot of this stuff didn't exist like this. The technology has come on so fast that there's no way you could be an expert in everything, especially if you've been running your SME business for, however many years. You will not have had the exposure to just the tsunami of technology and opportunity and ways of working. But those who really have that curiosity to say, wow, the benchmark of success is not the number of consultants I have, which is easy to see on LinkedIn. And again, I think that's where you get a lot of A-type personalities, and they're competitive and they want to see that they have the number of headcount. I'm guilty of it myself. It's an easy dopamine fix once again.
It is dopamine, absolutely.
But you don't know if that business is profitable. You don't know if that business, what's their per head count revenue, what per desk average. That was a metric that my old business used to always use. What's the per desk average? That should be going up. Because that's what these tools should be enabling. And that becomes a win-win for everybody. It becomes a win for the business, becomes a win for the consultant. The consultant's not sitting there. I mean, what's the thing that the consultant hates doing the most? Data entry. And yet we are requiring consultants to do loads and loads of data entry.
Multiple times. Same data on different systems.
It is literally not their personality to do. There's exceptions, but you will not find this incredible, amazing recruiter who's also an incredible, amazing data entry person. They're just different people. So what can you use from technology? And there's some really amazing, whether it's AI products or data enhancement products out there. But also the automation and the productivity enablement to take that out of the recruiter's day. If you've properly put in tech and put in systems and processes, you've suddenly given the space for that recruiter to do what they love best, working the job, making relationships, making placements, providing great customer service. Most recruiters are people. They're people.
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
why we say it's a people business at the end of the day. And I hope it will always be that. But the way that these businesses can leverage technology is what's going to be the new gold, the new oil, so to speak.
Yeah, enhance your people.
How do you enhance your people? I love that. Let's coin that. But the more you can do that, and that's where going back to that 30 head milestone to suddenly bake in this person potentially, I think is a really, really powerful place. And I think it's a very, very powerful mindset for that recruitment leader to have, to say, no, I'm building my business in a new way.
Yes.
It's not going to be based on just head count
And gut. There's a lot
because
of
that's
that.
what I was successful doing. It's taking the very, very best, and how do we still keep the same ethos? You can still have the same ethos, but underpin it by all the tech that's now available.
Yeah. I think just start, even if it's like the simplest way to do it is, what do I not like doing? Where is my pain point coming from? What is consistent with what everyone's telling me? What's the biggest pain point? Why does it exist? Rather than just going, oh, this is a big pain point, let me just get a band-aid solution. Like, investigate it further, put that effort in. And then you go, okay, how can I use tech to basically simplify it? The issue is that I have found, and there is no short term or there's no quick win in terms of data, CRM, tech-based strategy for you to then have something that basically provides for your business. Because chances are, and this is not recruitment specific, this is for majority of the industries. Again, back to your point about how quickly tech has evolved and the requirements. And every time you've used technology, if you've used multiple platforms, it's generated data. And now it's overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And there is so much data. And there's not just like duplicates, there's just this abundance of data, and you don't know what to do with what.
Yes.
So rethinking your requirements, the data architecture, how you're going to get your team to use and input and manage and validate data by building those simple workflows, all of that will take time.
Yeah.
But once you've done it, you will never have to start from scratch. And I think, when I say it, of course it's simple, but I do have empathy because it's an uphill climb, like a steep climb initially. So I can see why people are like, nah, it's not broken, don't want to fix it.
Yeah.
I'll just keep like adding things.
Yeah, I think, I know from personal experience, we were just saying that when do you add a CRM, 1 or 5? I actually just came from a meeting this morning, and they were saying in really incredible business with a really incredible, very short growth journey. But he was saying, the early days, they started pretty much in COVID. The early days, it was just, the founders just doing it, just going and doing it. And we can all recall back to COVID time. It was a different world. It was a different fight. It was a fight. It was a challenging time. My business, I run a marketing agency. We do not have the same BD culture that a recruitment business would have. Even though I coach companies and I've lived this for the last 20 years, but I found myself in the same place. I was the BD machine because only I needed to know. I fell into bad habits. My CRM became my folder system. And finally this year I looked at it and said, okay, we're gonna do something about this, and trying to re-engineer and repopulate all that stuff that could have been done properly from the offset. I found myself in a much bigger place of pain having to redo it, and I'm not through it. There's a combo of manual and technical to fix that. And so this is why I empathize, because if you've now take that and scale that to multiple dozens even of consultants who've all had these bad habits and created these massive databases that with useless data half the time, it can feel like an insurmountable task.
Yes.
And then there's this feeling that, I don't have the budget, I don't have the resource, I don't have time. Ooh, the market's tough, so everybody has to be sell. If you stop for a minute and take a step back and say, okay, breathe. What do we need to fix to enable this for the future? But equally, what's the low-hanging fruit? So many times I speak to businesses that they say, well, we can't put an automation program in because our data's too bad. I was like, well, what's the opportunity cost you have right now? Every month is an opportunity cost to the business. So find your segment just based on your data. Segment what data can you use today. Start with that. I always use the expression, what are the amuse-bouche while you're waiting for the Michelin star meal? But you need some amuse-bouche because you're going to go very, very hungry if you're waiting for that meal. So what's the low-hanging fruit you can establish? Sort that out. Yes, you're not getting all, the fancy 12-course meal yet, But you don't want to miss out on opportunities. You know, right now we're all waiting for the economy to pick up. We're all waiting for, I don't want to date this podcast, but you know, businesses are waiting for that optimism. And now is the time. I know that the default's going to come to a place of, I just got to work extra hard of doing everything I've always been doing.
Really long
but now
hours.
is actually the time to be putting in those processes and putting in the strategy and the ways of working. Because when it does come up, well, I know what side of the bell curve I want to be on.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's too late once it's already started.
Because then it's just, then you're busy, isn't it? And you're busy. Just
and you'll never get over that. And I think that happened. I think there was a tale of two cities with COVID. I think there's the ones who took that time and worked on the business. And there's the ones who, and gosh, it was a tough time. So I'm not telling anybody that they should have done their business any differently. But the ones who invested in the tech and in the processes during that period, everybody came out strong in 21, 22. Everybody did.
Which got busy as well. Then.
It got busy. But the ones who took the investment in 2020 are now still doing okay now, even though it's tough. But they're doing better than the ones who didn't put that time in at the time.
That is, I'm exactly like that. I just feel like, you know, it's cyclical. Things, you know, go up and down. Sometimes you have a strong candidate market. Sometimes you don't. It's never... It happens, and it happens a lot. It's just, what do you do when things do get quiet, you know? What do you do? Because that really does matter, isn't it? Like, even when you're, say, for example, as an individual, you're between jobs, it's what you do with that free time. Do you invest in yourself? Do you, you know, learn new things? Because otherwise it's all going to be the same, isn't it? It's what you do with the quiet time that really helps you when things get busy, because that's when you can move with confidence and hopefully like a stability in operations. To finish off, I'm going to ask you for, well, my one question is going to have two questions. Typical.
Obviously.
Couldn't do it differently. Advice for business leaders as they think about marketing. 3 pieces of advice. But I would also really love you to give advice to people who are marketeers at the moment within recruitment agencies, irrespective of where they're at in their career journey. But if maybe like, you know, your small to medium enterprise, you know, or maybe like 100 people business who might be doing it all themselves or might have like one other person. What's your advice for them? And then what's your advice for your business leaders when they think and approach marketing?
I hope I can answer that actually in the same answer. I'm gonna endeavor to do so.
Let's do it.
I'm gonna go back to that book that ebook I mentioned, because I wrote that book for recruitment leaders. It's written in a voice for recruitment leaders, but the number of recruitment marketers who've told me that they've downloaded it and what it's meant for them. So it's very, very easy to take anything, or easy, but you should look at it. You just have to take the same issue from both angles. So from the recruitment leader's point of view, it is, what do I want for my business? What are the goals? And where can marketing support? From the recruitment marketer's angle is, hopefully they have an appetite and drive that they're wanting to play that role. You know, that they may not. So let's make an assumption that they do. Is trying to find the route in to make that difference. I've spoken to a lot of recruitment marketers. There's a bit of a family out there, actually, believe it or not, that we come together with similar challenges. That I hear a lot of, you know, I really want to make a difference, but my leadership how do I get them to buy into this? So when I say it's the same answer coming from both directions, is if you're both leader and marketer, if you both share that same vision, and it probably comes down to hiring the right people for the role. But if you both can, you know, share in that together and come with a place of humility, knowing what you want to achieve, but then leaning on each other to get their vantage point is where things are going to be the strongest. And you know, I hear it from recruitment marketers as well. It's like, oh, they just don't understand. They don't understand me. They don't understand me. Well, until you can understand them. And really, I'm sorry that they're your boss at the end of the day. So it is actually that the flow that it needs to go in is you need to understand them first. Until that marketer can understand their pain points and what makes them tick and get those wins in with them. But I believe in the Pareto principle of do 80% that you know is going to work, and or maybe in the case of 80% of what your leadership or stakeholders want you to do. Just start.
Exactly.
But with that 20%, use it to your advantage. Start testing different things or doing what you want to do. And obviously set SLAs and agreements on this. But when you can start proving the ROI of this, you can now start moving that into the 80%.
That's so cool.
And then you start, and then you do it all over again. And you try something new for your 20%. Then you move it into your 80%. And over time, and using data and speaking the recruitment leaders' language and their pain points and understanding what they want to achieve, you're going to find you're going to become much, much more influential to them and much more a linchpin to their success and trust. You will earn their trust on their growth journey. And over time, I think there becomes this, this strength together, this house that nobody can break down because you're coming, you're hand in hand with it.
Yeah, there's like proof, there's trust, and there's like clarity. I love your 80-20, the almost like the permission to experiment with that 20%, because then that keeps you curious as well. And it's almost like you can get your fill of whatever it is that you're looking for, the excitement, with playing with tools.
Well, otherwise, you can't just keep filling up. At some point the jug overflows, right? You can't just keep putting more and more on somebody without taking something off. Because it's just either that person's going to burn out, or again, this is where you get the coloring in department, because you're just throwing stuff at them and never letting them actually do their job.
Yeah.
But hopefully you get to the right place, and that's when the magic happens.
That's when the magic happens. I think I'm just going to add to that and just go communicate with your marketing department, your marketeer as business leaders. You've got the strategy, you've got the goals. Also tell them about it, because obviously not mind readers at the end of the day. And focus on consistency. I find some companies that come up with this big marketing campaign, brand campaign, lasts for 2 weeks and then blunk,
gone.
You never hear of it again. If you're going to invest in consistency, because results take time. Show yourself, your marketeer, and your marketing campaigns that grace.
Fabulous end to the session.
I
agree.
Lovely having you, Kristie. It was such a joy recording this episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.